Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Motor City Metrics podcast here at TigersMLReport.com. I'm Rahil Castillo. Alongside me is Uper and John. Chris may or may not join us depending on what's going on later, but hopefully we'll get to see Chris a little while. So it's city council night at his house, and that makes it a little harder for him to jump on. He's got Harrison. So you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And so tonight will be the first time we bring back the segments in a while. It feels like it's been almost like 2 weeks, Uber.
Oh,
since
at least that, maybe 3.
Has it been 2 weeks? Has it been since like 2 weeks since we've done segments?
Hang on.
Yeah, because there was no pod last Thursday, right?
Yeah, there was no pod because of the All-Star break.
Right.
And then we just did the improv Monday pod, which we don't really do segments for. So
you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. I guess if I plug in the speaker or the microphone, that might help. I just got out of the car. Long ride.
Yeah. Did you just get back from vacation today?
No, I was down in Kansas City.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, you went to go see the game.
Yeah, I was on vacation last week up in the UP. We came back on Saturday night. We got here. And then I left yesterday to go down to KC for 2 games.
Got it. All right. So, yeah, so that's right, because I saw you streaming, or not streaming, but I saw you take a picture of it earlier on Twitter. Hello, Stan. Welcome everybody who's watching us on YouTube, both at Motor City Metrics and the Tiger Minor League Report. So a couple of things, too, with Motor City Metrics here in the next couple of weeks. We're going to be scheduling. There's going to be a schedule coming out. So every week we'll see it's going to take some time, but essentially we're going to have some shows, other shows besides baseball. So it's part of the Motor City Metrics network, if you will. The Motor City Metrics podcast will still be here. It's not nothing changing on that part, but we're just kind of expanding our horizons a little bit and allowing other people to stream live. So, but like I said, more on that a little later, but the podcast will still be formatted the same way. It's just gonna other shows other times. So we'll get to that a little later. Well, once I get some more details. But so the Tigers taking 3 out of 4 from the Kansas City Royals, as it was a pitcher's fest. If you like pitching, well, you got that this week from Michael Lorenz. And I mean, he's got his best 21. He's got the ML best 21 2/3 innings of scoreless relief. So, and there we go. So
there goes my inside the number.
Exquisite.
Thank you, Stan. Thank you, Stan, for the $9.99. We appreciate that.
Nice.
Yeah. So the bullpen getting it done too. In terms of an offensive explosion, I mean. But the Tigers got it done. That's all that matters. The top of the order continues to struggle a little bit. But it was the bottom order that got it done today. Ibanez went 2 for 4, and Eric Haas 1 for 4, and a pair of walks by Akil Badu, and you were there. So in terms of like game wise, in terms of offensive performance against the Royals, Zach Greinke's now 1-10. Imagine being Zach Greinke, right?
Yeah.
You made all this money and you decide to go back to Kansas City, to kind of round out your career, and it might hurt your, not saying Hall of Fame, but just gonna hurt your WAR just a little bit.
Yeah, it's kind of coming the full circle. He came in to Kansas City when they weren't very good, and he's gonna go out with Kansas City when they weren't very good. But he still showed today. He showed. You love the word moxie, right? He showed some moxie out there, and he challenged some guys when they least expected it. And I think he threw some off-speed stuff when they were looking for heat. And that's kind of how wily veterans do it. But the Tigers scratched 2 runs off him, and that was enough today. It's interesting. I was there for the Wednesday-Thursday game. They scored a grand total of 6 runs, but they won them both. So part of that is the Royals have a pretty rowdy lineup. Even when Bobby Witt wasn't in the lineup today, that made it even worse. But even when he's in there, it's nothing to write home about. They had the one slugfest on Tuesday night where they beat the Tigers 11-10, but even then the Tigers almost stole that one late. But overall, the Tiger pitching, other than the one game, looks really spot on. And whether it's to the quixotic chance of getting back into the race, or to have these guys be in demand on the trade market, Erod and Lorenzen showed up and they did their job against the bad Royals team.
Yeah, Erod, 7 innings, 4 hits, 2 runs on 7 and struck out 7. And we just mentioned too with Michael Lorenz, but it's also the fact that here you are in a situation where you went 5-2 in the road trip, as Stan mentioned in the chat. They now come home, play the Padres, and the Padres are a team that is also in a weird state right now, in the sense that you look at the standings right now in the NL West, and we know that we've talked about this before, where and you know, I know John's gonna do a victory lap here in a second about the D-backs here, but the D-backs are still hanging around, and they're just a game and a half back, game and a half back of the Dodgers. San Francisco has done pretty well too. San Francisco seemingly has come out of nowhere, plugging along. The Padres coming in, you're 46. I mean, you're scoring runs. I mean, you have a run differential of plus 42, but you're, with the exception of the Rockies, every other team in the AL West or NL West is doing well. And as Stan said, dead on, Padres overpaid and underperforming, but they have bats. Fernando Tatis has been pretty well, and he's enough to where every day Ben still bothers me to do a trade in our league, Uper. And I told him, no more. Do not offer me any more trade offers. I'm not trading Logan Webb either. So it's enough. The D-bags. Blood right with the D-bag comment on YouTube. So the Padres are still going to be, I mean, the Padres are a team that's going to also, they travel very well. Padre fans, last time they were here last year, it was last year. Well, they were here last year, weren't they?
Not sure.
I don't remember.
I remember. I think it was. Yeah, I think they were here last year, but they had a bunch of fans. They traveled pretty well, because I remember seeing a Terry Kennedy jersey. And that's I was gonna say, Uper, I knew you appreciate that, because I, outside of the sea of Steve Garvey and Tony Gwynn jerseys, I saw a Terry Kennedy jersey and I was just blown away, because
that's impressive.
Yeah, that's impressive, and that's a throwback, because people might know him, for anybody that's older than 40.
Yeah,
might remember him more as a Giant, because he was in the '89 World Series.
Yeah,
but that people don't even know he was a longtime Padre catcher, and a pretty good one too.
I think he played for the Cardinals for a while too.
Did he? Oh, okay. I did not know.
Started there.
Yeah. So we did get a question by Richard. Richard, we'll get to your question here shortly. It's actually for you specifically, Uper. So we'll get to that. And it's about the trade deadline. And the trade deadline will be definitely we'll start off with the trade deadline tonight.
Oh.
And really, before we get to the segments, because those two you mentioned, Uper, essentially looking like they're going to be. Then Scott Harris has been very quiet. A lot of the Tiger fans don't want to be we'll get into doing a poll here in a second, but I think there's a 50-50 split, and people in YouTube who are watching us tonight, and even you leave a comment afterwards on the audio side, I think there's a 50-50 split of Tiger fans who do not want the Tigers to make a move at all. And then somebody mentioned earlier, because I said Wilmer Flores is going 97, trade him too. What?
Sure.
What? Are you high?
Trade the present, trade the future, play trade them all.
Yeah, I mean, we've had this debate many times before, but I'm still on the side of the fence of being sellers. I did see a report today from MLB Network that the Astros and the Rays were interested in Michael Lorenzen, which is it's good timing for Michael Lorenzen, as he is not allowed an earned run in the month of July. A lot of people were kind of questioning his all-star selection, but to be fair, he has had a pretty solid season and has really picked it up as of late. And Eduardo Rodriguez now back. He's had 3 starts since he's returned. Looked really, really good against the Royals. Those are the two guys I think the Tigers could get the most out of at the trade deadline. Jason Foley and Alex Lange, I've been a big proponent on trading them. But I think Alex Lange, with his struggles over these last couple of months and him still having so many years left to control, I don't suspect the Tigers are going to move him. I think that's more of an off-season type of trade as well. I'm kind of feel the same way about Jason Foley. I think he's a guy that could be moved in the off-season. But, yeah, I think Michael Lorenzen and Eduardo Rodriguez are the two names that we should be looking at. And I think everything is kind of lining up well for the Tigers, with Erod coming back and having some good starts, and Michael Lorenzen pitching some of the best baseball, I mean, arguably of his career right now for the Tigers. So I'm on the fence of selling. I would love to hear what you guys have to say in the chat. I mean, if you do want the Tigers to buy, who realistically could they even buy at the deadline? I mean, I was looking. There's not a lot of bats, I feel like, this trade deadline. I feel like it's mostly a lot of starting pitching, which I don't think that's necessarily a need for the Tigers. But yeah, I'm on the fence of selling, and I think Lorenzen and Erod will be the two names that are most likely to go at the deadline.
So I put it in our chat, by the way, and I'm going to put this in the show description tonight. But so Chris and I are double teaming on a article. So tomorrow, my portion of it will come out. So I'm focusing on players in the NL East and the Brewers and the AL East. So basically both East divisions and plus Milwaukee. So there's some names I suggested. And there's a couple names that it was funny. Chris and I were talking about AJ Vukovich and Blaze Alexander, who are having pretty good seasons for Arizona. I like those names myself personally for the Tigers. Both of them have some pop to them. But so yeah, check out the link in the show description. It's really good work by Chris. And one of the names he mentions for the Astros is Joey Loperfido. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly. But yeah, so talking about his power, as far as him and then Corey Lee, the catcher, because I still think I'm going to die on this hill, and I'm going to say this. I think the Tigers are going to trade for a catcher. Whatever package they get, and John, don't give me that look, but here's why.
Okay.
And here's 3 reasons why. One, right now, Dylan Dingler is on the IL. So, number 2, you look at AAA right now, you look at Proparski, you have Andrew Knapp. There's not much, and you have Donnie Sands. Donnie Sands isn't really moving the needle in terms of even exit velocity or anything like that. Josh Krause just taking a step back. Your catching depth looks dangerously thin right now. Trade for a catcher, and then you look at Eric Costa's numbers right now. Eric Costa is a good defensive catcher. He's proven it. He's caught 2 no-hitters, a shutout, and everything, but he's not doing it offensively. As much as I love Eric Costa, something's got to give. So if you can get a catcher that's serviceable, that can hit, and it's right away. I mean, the bottom line is like I'm not even sure. I was trying to do some digging around, seeing what's wrong with Dingler, but even then, Dingler's not a sure thing either. Dingler still strikes out quite a bit. So, yeah, it's just, to me, there's somebody that made a suggestion here. Mike Doyle said Michael Lorenzen to the Astros for Forrest Whitley, Corey Lee, and Joe Perez.
Yeah, whatever happened to Forrest? I haven't heard Forrest Whitley's name in a while.
I think it's been banged up.
Yeah, I mean, once upon a time, I think the best pitching prospect in baseball.
So, real quick before we continue on some of these trade, the Richard question for Uper is: can Scott Harris, the El Maglio GM, make shortstop? Essentially, in other words, can you make Javi Baez disappear? I'm just going to say it that way.
Well, it's interesting. Javi hit the home run last night when I was there. That was pretty cool to see. And today he actually hit a couple line drives fairly hard. They both got caught. So he was looking pretty good. He made a wonderful play out in the field to get out at second base. That really kind of quashed a rally that was starting to flourish a little bit there for the Royals. So the thing is, no, I don't think he can make it disappear. No one's going to take on that contract. I can't imagine they would, unless the Tigers paid an extremely large portion of it. And I don't know why Chris Ilitch would do that. I think Javi Baez is going to be playing second base or shortstop for the Tigers for at least the next 2 years.
Yeah.
At some point they might buy it out if he really cratered and they had something better. And then the flip side is, who do they have better right now than Javi Baez? I mean, as tough as it is to watch when he goes through his slumps, he's their guy. I mean, they Alavila hitched the wagon to him a couple of years ago, and like it or not, they don't have a ready replacement. So I think they got to just roll with it. If he can do something magical to make it disappear, more power to him.
Honestly, and well, you know what? Well, let me revisit that because we did get a question from Blood Right.
Exquisite.
Thank you for the $5. And he's going to a Whitecaps game or two in the first week of August. Hopefully we can meet up, Blood, right? Yeah, that'd be awesome. Is there any chance of draftees that are going to be there by then? And also, is there a decent hotel? I would recommend hotel-wise the Holiday Inn Express and Suites, which is it's Grand Rapids. Comfort Inn Grand Rapids North is a good one, or the Hilton Comstock Park is a little pricey, but it's worth it. So if somebody used to live out there. But anyway, get back to the question, or getting back to the shortstop. Yeah. And as Ty Cobb said in their best, the Tigers shortstop prospects are barren wasteland. Just to give you an example of that, Gage Workman was on the development list, and he hit a home run tonight, but not for Erie, for West Michigan. He's regressed quite a bit, and his playing time has been reduced in Erie. So Danny Soretti is not moving the needle. It's kind of a thing where they have to. If everybody complains about Baez, it's like then who else you're gonna? They have to get clever in trades either. I mean, there's not really much of a choice, and I mean, Keefe can't play short, and there's not really an alternative. Like Andrew Navigato's he's a 4A player, so there's really, really thin options. And if they did make a trade, maybe they do trade for a shortstop as part of the equation and let Baez take a buyout. I don't know, but look, for what it's worth, I know Baez frustrates the hell out of people. I know he does, but again, it's what you signed up. People, that's his game. Now he's missing fastballs, which is not part of what we signed up for. Excuse me, what Tiger fans signed up for. So that's where the problem probably gets worse for people. So, it's an interesting dilemma, but they really do not have any options right now.
Yeah, and what Uper said, just not having if there's a viable replacement, but also Javi Baez isn't really holding the Tigers back from anything. I don't think he's keeping the Tigers from being a playoff team in any sorts. And the only thing I could add is maybe in a Michael Lorenzen or Eduardo Rodriguez trade, you get a shortstop prospect who's major league ready that could maybe fill in for the Tigers for Javi Baez. We did see McKinstry get a start at shortstop as well. But I think we're stuck with Baez. And like I said, I don't think he's holding this team back necessarily. Now, maybe in a year or two from now, when the Tigers have progressed and are ready to compete, that's a different story. But for now, I think we're just going to have to play it out with him as a starting shortstop for the rest of the year.
Now, here's the thing. I hate trying to read players' minds because none of us have that ability. Okay, we're not in anybody's head. But does he strike you as the excitable type of guy who might focus in better if the team is better? I mean, if the Tigers are legit contending next year or the year after, is he more dialed in as a ball player?
I'd say so.
I just wonder if he's again, I'm not in his head. Is he bored by playing a 10 game under 500 baseball?
Well, they're 8 games under 500, but
overall, in general, I don't know. And again, that might be completely false. I mean, he may have just gotten to this point as a ball player, and this is what he is. But you see that these times after he's been benched, he comes back with a little bit of juice, and maybe the day-to-day contention would awaken some of that. I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard to say really what it is. I mean, but Baez goes out there and does this thing. I mean, he's just, it is what it is, for lack of better explanation, honestly. And there's, in terms of how he brings himself, his character to the locker room and everything, anytime I'm down there in the locker room, he's fine. Mm-hmm. He doesn't, I mean, the media might think of sometimes that he might, because he's standoffish, what have you, but I think sometimes, even as a working member of the media, sometimes he's fine. The more I get in there, sometimes the more I'm like, these guys, I mean, some guys don't want to talk to the media, and that is unfortunate. It is what it is. But there's also, again, that's another story for another day, but there's other factors too to consider what the people have to deal with. So, but as far as, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I had some real fun last night when he hit that home run. I happened to be sitting at a spot where you could tell it was going. It was gone. That was
Yeah.
pretty cool. But sitting next to me was this team of, I would say they were 15, 16-year-old baseball team. They're all at the game together. And it turns out, I was listening to them talk, about 3, 4 guys, maybe 5 guys on the team were from Puerto Rico.
Nice.
And yeah, they moved to Puerto Rico at some point. I mean, the family, I don't know when. I didn't get that part of the story, but they were ecstatic when he hit the home run. I mean, they were yelling for him. They were cheering him on before the at bat, after the at bat. So that was pretty neat. Just a happenstance run into that.
Yeah, there was when last year. It's funny you mentioned that too, because there was a couple of prospects in Somerset from the Yankees that this guy from Puerto Rico and his family, like a bunch of friends, they were just taking up one part of a section in Erie.
Mm-hmm.
There was also, maybe it was Jason Dominguez, or no, it was somebody else. I forgot who it was, but they were like, they made a point that they go around and follow. So
yeah. But right, I did kind of bring it back to the trade deadline and the minor leagues as well. Zach McKinstry was a name I think some Tigers fans have contemplated trading. And I also saw a post on Twitter from Cameron, who helps out with Motor City Metrics, about Parker Meadows and how he's been performing well. Do you think there's a possibility where maybe they move an Andy Ibanez or Zach McKinstry to make room for Parker Meadows to potentially get some starts in the outfield towards the end of the year?
1 second. Here we got another
Mr.
chat. So, thank you.
Bloodright.
Exquisite.
Thank you, Bloodright. For $5, draftees will be showing up at the minors probably in the next week or two. So more than likely, Max Clark's been working on Lakeland, so you'll probably see them either in Complex or Lakeland in the next couple of weeks. So I do want to get to the draft a little later and who have they signed. To answer that question real quick, because I do want to get to the segments, because I don't want to get too far back, and we'll get back to questions. Essentially, with Parker Meadows right now, he is playing well. The numbers don't lie. And right now, even with the numbers against lefties, the one thing he needed to conquer, he's done that. I think after the trade deadline, there could be some room for those, as what AJ Hinch and both Sky Harris said, earmarked at bats. August and September would probably be the best scenario for them. So as far as the Kevin McGonigal signing, no word as of yet. But according to Chris, I think the Tigers have like $2.9 million left to sign him. So if he's going out there and saying, hey, you know what, I can make more money after I go to Auburn, hey, to each your own. I mean, if that's the case. So, but if Chris comes on, we can go into a little bit about that later. So let's go into inside the numbers. All right, Uber, what is your inside number today?
Well, it's interesting. Since I was down at the ballpark, I didn't get a chance to look up any specific stats, but I did run across something very interesting at the game. Now, again, last year, just because of umpiring and family circumstances, I didn't make it to any major league games last year. So I got down to KC last night. And the first thing that I noticed, and you'll have to tell me if this is at Comerica Park, every pitch, they gave the reading of horizontal break, vertical break, exit velo, launch angle right on the scoreboard in real time, which was fun, really fun. And it's just interesting how the numbers have become ingrained in the day-to-day life at the ballpark, at least in Kansas City. Are they doing that at Comerica?
They're doing. I think they have at the bottom. I'm trying to think of where. I'm not drawing a blank. I know in the scoreboard they've updated. There's certain numbers they show. I just can't remember on the bottom of the scoreboard where the pitcher's line is. If anybody's out there on YouTube, please assist me with that, because it's on. There is some advanced metrics on the bottom part of the scoreboard. I just can't remember for the life of me right now. When it might sound snobby when I'm going to say this, but when you're sitting in the press box, scoreboard is the furthest thing away.
Sure.
Sometimes. So.
Well, I'll tell you, I thought it was a lot of fun when you see when somebody would take a swing at something and miss and look bad doing it, to look up and say, oh, that thing broke 14 inches. That's the kind of stuff you couldn't do before.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. So Stan and Ty Cobb are confirming that. And so I just, for the life of me, can't remember exactly what it was in there. But No, and yeah, okay. And there's sometimes too during batting practice they have a different setup too, where you see they're as they're testing it. Sometimes you'll see that too. So
You know, I'm sure a lot of fans don't care, could care less, don't even know what those things are. But boy, for the people who have invested any time, I thought it was really, and again, maybe I'm behind the times because I live here in Iowa. I don't get to as many games as I used to, but it was really an enhancement for me from a numbers perspective.
yeah, I mean, somebody put in the chat, Beer Bat Podcast, Tigers scoreboard, great. Well, yeah, greater than the rest of the AL Central. Well, the White Sox don't really. Yeah, that's anyways. Whatever. Uper, what is your insider number today?
Oh, he just did it.
Oh, is it that one? Oh, that was. Sorry,
Yeah.
John, you're up next. I'm sorry.
Okay, so something I wanted to touch on earlier in the show, kind of going over our takeaways from the Royals series, was Spencer Torkelson, and his OPS plus is at 100 right now, which is essentially league average. So 14 home runs, leading the Tigers, had 2 home runs in the game against the Royals, an unfortunate loss against the Royals. I mean, when the Tigers score 10 runs, you would ideally like to win that game, but that was a tough loss. But yeah, I mean, Torkelson, 232, slugging over 400. Like I said, OPS is around 725, which is right around league average. So this is what a league average hitter looks like right now in Spencer Torkelson. And I think we can all agree he was probably rushed to the big leagues last year. Probably shouldn't have been on that roster. I think, that was a front office that was trying to save their job and rushed him to the big leagues. But yeah, I mean, Spencer Torkelson, I think the progress has been there, and I think he will get better as the season goes along. And I think when we talked about it in the preseason, 800 OPS, that was a goal for us that he could have. And I think he's getting there. And I'm not saying he's going to get there, but I think he's going to be close. And to see him finally get to league average, I think it is a huge progression for him. And I think a lot of Tigers fans should be happy with what we've seen from Torkelson.
I feel like the last few podcasts we've done in a row, we've done some sort of Spencer Torkelson apology tour, and I'm not sure why.
Well, I haven't been on, but
no, it's just I feel like we mentioned Spencer Torkelson quite a bit about, well, he's proving people wrong. Well, he's doing what he's supposed to do. Am I missing something? I mean, yes, he was rushed to the majors. Yes, he has been most ballyhooed first pick. I get it. I understand that, but he's doing what he's doing now. I just think it should be just not. It should be more of a, okay, he's doing what he expected to do. I could be wrong. I mean, it's just, again, he's doing what he's supposed to do. And I think there's sometimes with these, I guess with storylines, I think there's more important storylines than that, because quite frankly, this was expected of him.
He's getting better. I think you can see it. And, it was one thing, he hit the 2 homers in the double the other night. That was fantastic. But a little thing today, he's up there. McKinstry's on third, 1 out. Riley Green walked to get to first. So now it's on Torkelson to get that run home, right? And it's 2-0. So the game's close. And I've talked about here on the podcast, the Tigers never, ever, ever seem to add on a run, to pad the lead. He falls behind 0-2, lickety split. I mean, just boom, boom. And you're thinking, oh boy, here we go. He really put together a pro at bat there. He fouled off some tough pitches. He took one. Then he hit that deep fly ball. And it was just a measly old fly ball, but it got that run home. And to me, that was the kind of at bat where he popped up too often last year and the beginning of this year. And he got the job done on that one. And that's what a guy in his position has to do. So today was an enjoyable day, but that was one of my little tiny moments I probably enjoyed the most.
Yeah, and I think
go ahead.
Yeah, but I just think, like, in the totality of the season, for a team that's not competing for a title or even competing for the playoffs, you kind of follow the development of players. And what Uper has said, I think the most important storylines for this Tigers team is the development of Riley Green and the development of Spencer Torkelson. And I think to see that, including a lot of other positive developments like Jake Rogers, Matt Vierling, Zach McKinstry, Eduardo Rodriguez, even some arms in the bullpen. But I think Riley Green and Spencer Torkelson, to me, they're going to play a big factor in their performance of how this season is looked upon, and the progression that we've seen, I think, needs to be talked about and needs to be appreciated, because it's definitely been there.
again, I'm just miffed here because I feel like we've talked about Riley Green being the best player on this team for the last 2 years. Am I imagining things here? Am I? Well, it just sucks because Chris is not here because the guy I do the podcast with the most. There's a lot of things to talk about. Yeah, obviously the bullpen was stealing my thunder here as we totally get off the segment, but it is what it is. I just think that there's Riley Green. We've talked about the progress of Riley Green and how he's when the Tigers without him were terrible. But again, if you want to make a ballyhoo about Spencer Torkelson of something that should be a natural progression, by all means. But Riley Green, for what he's doing at his age, he was doing this last year. I mean, he struggled towards the end of the year, granted, but still, he got off to a good start. I was expecting this. I was expecting him to be a good hitter because he made adjustments at every single level. I maybe my expectations are different from you guys. I don't know. I feel like I'm doing some sort of weird Groundhog's Day here or something. Anyway, so my inside number is 166, and that is the number. You know what? Wait a minute. Before we get to my number, I just feel like are we been negative or something? Am I imagining things that we've not been positive here or something? Or what am I missing here, folks?
No, I think it's just stating that we've seen progress and it's been a positive development for the Tigers. That's all we've.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I was just saying because I feel like we talk about how well they do under the circumstances. So okay. Sorry, I don't get too far off track. But I was just trying to make sure I understood everything. 166. That is the WRC plus of Kerry Carpenter in the month of July, as he's been arguably the number that I like the most too is 18.4, and that's his strikeout rate or his K rate, which puts him among the top 30 in all of baseball for July. And that's in terms of just what I expected. Like it's as far as is a little bit unexpected for me. So I have to admit that one of the things about Kerry Carpenter, I was worried about the consistency. I was worried about whether he could do this on a regular basis, and he's proven me wrong. And I'm good to see that. And that's a story to me that this is a guy who did it very well in the minors. We saw the rise. We saw the Aaron Judge had a coach help him out. And that's a positive because the Tigers really needed another win outside of the Torkelson and the Greens and the bullpens of the world. So, but yeah, there's a couple comments coming in too about this too. Stan with his inside number, 300, Riley Green's present average. And I like what Seta here said. People have way too high expectations of people. High expectations, especially for dudes who are 22 and 23 years old. Mm-hmm. Blood right with Riley Green, the Tigers, Aaron Judge, hopefully without the injury history. And then, so. But yeah, the torque bus stuff is, I'm over it because he's doing better and he's doing exactly what he's expected to do. So
I like that they're doing the right thing by him too. I'm really happy they keep him. No matter how he's been doing, they've kept him in either the 2 or the 3 hole, sometimes the 4. But in that area, it's got to be. If this team is going places, he has to be a part of the lineup. So they just kept him there, and he's learning to do it.
Randall with the comment of the night: "Wife beater shirt is a good look, John."
it's a comfy look.
Yeah.
It's hot out, man.
Yeah. It's luckily we managed to fix the AC earlier. That was nice, but I'm happy. I was just saying, I feel like sometimes we've been as a show, as a collective, I think we've been very on a happy-go-lucky pace. So I don't think we're too negative or anything. So showing the guns. Oh man.
I like it.
All right, let's go into what is the good, the bad, the ugly in baseball. All right, so we did get a couple people chiming in on YouTube on giving some of their inside numbers. Emo Green with his Eric Haas's total on base percentage, third best in baseball for catchers that have caught 30 games. All right, I like that. It's creative. It's good. I like that. So, all right. Let's see if anybody else is in there. Okay, so continue on. John, what is your good, the bad, the ugly this week?
All right, so my good, since I technically haven't given my thoughts on the draft yet, I'm going to go with Max Clark, the Tigers selecting Max Clark. I think a lot of fans were set in stone with Wyatt Langford, especially when Paul Skeens went number 1. Dylan Cruz going number 2 to the Nationals. Good for Washington. I mean, they got an absolute stud. And for Max Clark for the Tigers, I think the Tigers got their guy. And like Yupa said in the podcast, if you listen to the fans, you're going to be in the seats with the fans. I think the Tigers viewed Max Clark as a guy with a lot of potential defensively on the base paths with his athleticism. The really only concern you have is with his power. I know the Tigers fans want these power bats. They wanted that middle of the order bat that can hit you 25 to 30 home runs. We don't know if Max Clark is going to be that, but he also is very young. There's room for him to grow physically, get stronger. So we'll see what happens there. But Max Clark, to me, has all the makings of a potential star and a guy that the Tigers can kind of essentially be the face of the Detroit Tigers one day. I think he has that potential, and I think it was a good selection for the Tigers. I think the draft in entirety with the 37th overall pick, the shortstop Kevin McConnell, the offensive potential he shows as well. Just a lot of positive things for the Tigers out of the draft, and I think we're going to look back on this draft and be happy with the picks that were made. My bad, just going around the MLB. The Cardinals have won 5 games in a row, so they're now 10 games under 500. So there's still a little bit of life left for the Cardinals. So it'll be really interesting to see what they do at the trade deadline. The NL Central, I'm not going to say it's winnable because the Brewers have kind of gotten their act together, but the Cardinals, there could be trade rumors of Nolan Arenado, Jack Flaherty, Jordan Montgomery. It'll be really interesting to see what the Cardinals do going into the trade deadline, because I don't think they've ever sold at a trade deadline in my lifetime. Maybe I'm wrong, but very interested. They have won 5 games in a row, so we'll see what happens. I think this next week is going to tell a lot about what we're going to see at the trade deadline, with a lot of these teams kind of on the fence right now of if they're going to buy, if they're going to sell, and what they're going to do. And then my ugly, I would just go with Tim Anderson and the Chicago White Sox kind of as a whole. But Tim Anderson, I was looking at bats that could be traded at the deadline. Tim Anderson's OPS right now is 549. I mean, he's just been dreadful, to say the least. And he's a guy, I believe, has a club option, if I'm not mistaken. But he was a guy that maybe the White Sox could have potentially traded away. And it's unfortunate because with the lack of bats on the free agent market, he was a guy, I mean, I'm not saying the Tigers could be interested, but he's a guy a lot of teams that need some offensive firepower could have looked at. But to see the season he's had has been really unfortunate to see heading into the trade deadline.
All right, I like that. Uper, what is yours?
Good. My good is going to be cleanliness. And here's what I mean by that. The Tigers are 5-2 since the All-Star break. Several of these wins, and again, the Royals and the Mariners are not powerhouses right now, although I think the Mariners should be better than they are. But the Tigers have played some really clean baseball games in these wins. I mean, there haven't been a lot of errors, mental mistakes on defense, base running miscues. Haven't seen a lot of egregious, decisions on pitches to swing at. They've really been playing a pretty tight form of baseball in most of these wins. I saw it firsthand the last 2 days, and that's what I was really looking for, about how efficient things were. And you can say, well, it was the Royals, and that's fine, but they're still getting paid as well. And they made the Royals look like the Royals. I mean, they didn't score much runs, but they kept the Royals off the scoreboard themselves. And they did that because they made some plus defensive plays, and they made all the routine plays. And that's not something we saw a lot. We go back to the 9-game losing streak and some of the early Keystone Cop stuff they were doing out there. So you can see the team has gotten better, and they have tightened up the ship, and hopefully they can continue down that role. Playing clean baseball. The bad, I'll talk about it again. It's really hard to believe the Royals have fallen to where they have. I mean, I know when they lost Vinny Pasquantino, they kind of lost their big bat in the middle of the lineup. And Bobby Witt, he just hasn't taken steps forward like I think they hoped. I mean, he has some home runs and he has some stolen bases and he makes a few flashy plays, but he also makes some routine mistakes in the field, and his on base percentage has been, until a recent little hot streak, been terrible all year. The rest of the lineup is just so boring. I mean, I hate to say this. I mean, this really is. I mean, there's nobody.
The bottom of the order, Uper, is like just, it reminds me of like just really those bad mid 90 Royals teams.
Yeah, exactly. Very faceless.
Yeah, very, yeah.
Yeah, I know. And again, they made some mistakes in this series. I mean, they made a couple of base running errors. They did a couple foolish things out there. And that's what bad teams do, and the Tigers took advantage of that. But I think the Royals, as they currently look, and you look at their farm system, they're a ways away. I mean, they took a big step back. That whole 2018 pitching draft of theirs not coming to any kind of fruition for them.
That made me look like a jackass. I honestly wait, not the 20. No. I did say the Royals did have better. I did say that. I'm, for the record, I will still own that. At that time, it was maybe it wasn't that class, but it was. Yeah, they're. Anyways, continue on. I'm sorry.
It's the one where they got Brady Singer and Jackson Kowar and Daniel Lynch and all. I mean, a couple.
I did say that was gonna be a really, like, they're gonna be fun to watch. That's what I did say. I was pretty hopeful about them, but
Asa Lacy, the next year they drafted him, and he's been terrible.
Yeah, you want to guess what kind of FIP he has right now, Uper?
It's got to be like.
How about ERA or FIP? Which one do you want? Which one did you say?
I'll say a 7 ERA.
No, his FIP is 7.96.
Okay.
His ERA is 11.25. So that's why you were like, that's why I made my suggestion. Like, wow, you got the FIP pretty well. That's spot on.
So the Royals, and the thing is, the fans. I was talking with some people. I like to talk to people who are around me, and especially I was there by myself on this trip, so I'm talking to anybody who wanted to talk. They are a pretty forlorn group. I mean, they're kind of resigned to losing. So I think the Tigers, there's some mediocrity to the Tigers lineup, but I think they're in a much better position long term than the Royals are right now.
Yeah.
Ugly personal story. I picked, because I was by myself. Usually when I go with friends, I stay downtown because it's way more fun in Kansas City to be downtown. I stayed at a place called the Hotel Lotus last night, right across the street from the stadium. You can walk to the stadium. That was the only good thing. Turns out the AC is broken.
Ooh.
The ice machines are broken. The 24-hour lock is a 0-hour lock. It's not locked outside, so pretty much anybody can get in that building. And there was everything that could go wrong with that place, other than you can walk to the stadium. That's where I stayed last night. So that was my ugly. It was so bad. I got, it was really hot and humid there last night and overcast, but I got back, I walked back, I was drenched. So I get into the room, and now it's as humid in the room as it is outside. So I take a shower, and I had the lights on. I just laid down. I ended up falling asleep completely naked with the lights on all night. That was me.
Look at you. Look at John.
I'm just imagining that.
John was great. It's almost, he got like shot. He's like, whoa.
Could you imagine that?
No, I wasn't trying to. Now you made it work. John, Jesus, man. You could have. Go ahead.
It's true, though. It's true.
Don't think of you for naked. Now everyone just did.
Wrong!
That's what I was shooting for. So anyway, the Hotel Lotus is a must avoid. Stay downtown if you go to Kansas City. That is a stone cold lock. It's not worth. It's worth it to pay for parking at the K and not walk. Period.
Oh, well, that's embarrassing.
All right. I don't know how you can follow up with that. Yeah, that's just, there's a. Oh, by the way, we got a couple we'll get there's comments and everything. We'll get to that here shortly after do my good, bad, ugly. Samuel, he's going. Him and his girlfriend going to Fenway coming up Sunday night with the Mets in town, and he's looking forward to peeking out at the right field bullpen and reliving the worst memory of his Tiger fandom. Oof. All right, so my good is the Tigers, because they made some. There's two goods for me this week, because one of them is kind of tied back to a Hall of Famer, but Both are historic. So my good is the Tigers, what happened to them on Tuesday. 12 teams scored in double digits as 3 games ended 11-10 the same day for the first time in Major League history. That's pretty cool. I mean, again, it sucks the Tigers lost, but Stan goes, it'll be a while before I donate again. Nice. All right. So the Cubs scored 17 runs, and then the Diamondbacks scored 16, and they beat the Braves 16-3. So it's essentially a football score. Yeah. And the Dodgers beat the Twins 10-3. The Dodgers and Twins both scored 10 runs, and both won 10-3 rather. And Cleveland beat the Pirates 10-1. 12 teams in double digits tied for the second most with double-digit runs in one day, which last occurred on May 30th, 1884. It trails only 13 teams that have scored in double digits on July 4th, 1884, according to the Elias Sports Bureau. Wow. I mean, imagine the records they have on. I mean, they're pretty much falling apart because whatever paper they printed it on, if it's even existent. But pretty cool stat. And the other one is an audio form one. And this one, to me, I'll give it some context here in a second. But I wanted to play this first. If it plays. Of course it doesn't. It plays before. Oh,
okay, Pete, thanks very much. We'll just have to adopt a wait-and-see attitude here. I re-emphasize, to the best of everyone's knowledge, no one was hurt, and there were no fatalities in this thing. It was very scary. I think, Joe, we're very fortunate it happened as early as it did. If it had happened an hour and a half later, it would have been a mess here.
A dreadful thought to think about all those people trying to get out on the concourse, which was filled up with black smoke as well. And, 5:45 is a whole lot better than 7:45.
Talking to Fred McGriff just a moment ago, and you're going to see a picture of him and some of our players in the outfield. He'll never forget his first day as an Atlanta Brave, that's for sure.
Well, we can laugh about it now, but he was brought in here to light a fire under this ball club. I think that was taking it to extremes.
That he has done. This week in baseball is coming along next, and we'll be back periodically to report from the ballpark as to what's next. So stay with us. Thank you.
Great voice of Skip Kerr there. I love Skip Kerr's voice. And the Braves won 3-1. I love Skip Kerr's voice. Absolute legend. Rest in peace.
Didn't me and you talk about This Week in Baseball? Was that you?
Oh, This Week in Baseball, sure. That was
that shows all.
I talked to someone about it. I'm not sure.
That was fantastic. Skip Kerr, he used to say whenever they would win, he would say, "Hey, it's cocktail hour."
Yeah,
and
the Braves win. I don't know. There's a cocktail hour, and then the Braves win.
Yeah, they made him quit saying that because it promoted drinking, which I always thought was lame.
Yeah. So that was 30 years ago. That was when there was a fire at Atlanta Fulton County Stadium, which I remember every time I went down to Florida with my family, we'd see the state going down 75 when it was lit up. The stadium, it was really cool to see. Mm-hmm. But it was the night that they also called Fred McGriff was traded to the Braves, and MLB.com, according to MLB.com, they consider that the greatest trade deadline deal ever. And it did change the fortunes. I mean, this is a guy who, if you recall, was a Padre and then went to the Jays. It was one of those things where the Jays and Padres were always trading with some certain strange reason. Mm-hmm. And then he went to Atlanta, and he was really the difference that really helped them. I mean, the compensation, the Braves traded Vince Moore, Donnie Elliott, and Melvin Nieves. Guess who Melvin Nieves played for? It was a Randy Smith love affair.
Tigers legend.
Tigers legend, Melvin Nieves. Because for whatever reason, the Tigers were obsessed with that guy. Anyway, but they also, another trade they talked about that I really liked too was 11.1 WAR is what he produced for Atlanta. But Jermaine died of the A's in 2001. He's produced a 2.8 WAR, but still, anyway, either way, I thought that was cool. And for somebody that was watching a lot of 90s baseball, especially because Steve Avery, who was a local product here where I live.
Yep.
People were following along as a Braves or as Atlanta fans. So
in that time frame, the Braves had such a big following built up from their days being on the Superstation, right through the whole 80s, the whole America's Team bit. The Tigers stunk mostly in the 90s. So I watched a ton of Braves baseball, and they were a lot of fun to watch. And the Crime Dog, I'll say to this day, my favorite moments in baseball are little things like I loved his swing when he would take a ball to the opposite field off the fence for a double and kind of had that big one-arm follow through I can still picture that in my mind to this day, and it's one of my favorite baseball memories.
Samuel, thank you so much for that. He gave us $10 Canadian, so thank you so much.
Exquisite.
Much appreciated, Samuel. Yeah, there was, you know what I liked about him too defensively? He was just a good defensive first baseman. He didn't get a lot of credit for that, but he always found a way to scoop out. He was very good at getting anything out of.
Well, he was excellent defensively, but he was on those Tom Amansky back-to-back AAU champion videos. The defensive training, so he should have been a defensive ace.
There's some people that know him more for that than his baseball career. I'm dead serious. I wish I was kidding about that, but so my bad is, so they recently did a poll from awfulannouncing.com. This should be ugly, but this is more bad because I think to me, it's just, this is all subjective. This is where I saw this. This is where I was kind of like one of those things where I think Bless You Boys Bless You Boys did a story about it, and I'm surprised Motor City Bengals did not. But so in terms of what the average for the first time since 2019, the MLB broadcast rankings been voted by the readers of Awful Announcing as you name your favorite and least favorite local broadcasting leagues or teams across the league teams. So number 30, the Detroit Tigers coming in at number 30 with a 1.55 score. The way they do scoring, I'm not going to go into it. But it was voted by over 64,000 votes. So here's where it is. According to, this is what they said. So the most common grade was a C. So 37% of the votes was C. So comments. The Mario and Pemba Rod Allen duo that broke up a few years ago was reasonably popular with readers. Since replacing the Tigers have not succeeded in those rankings, bottom out this year. It is a stark decline from the Fox Sports Detroit days. Josh Levin, Kirk Gibson. I think Kirk Gibson's fine. I still think Kirk Gibson's fine. He's sharp. He knows the stuff. The Josh Levin period time before he became a national guy, that was really good. Mario Pemba, again, Matt Shepard's. I don't know. I know people have had a problem with Matt Shepard, but the players only broadcast from Saturday or from the Blue Jays game. That was something. I'm not going to say that. I'm just going to say that was something. That's all I'm going to say about it, because I was paying attention to both because we had our friend of the show, Greg Gagne, called the no-hitter. And we actually went out to eat. I didn't tell anybody this. We went out to eat after. Greg was so cool and such a good friend of ours. He actually went out to eat with us afterwards. So Chris and I got to hang out with Greg after the no-hitter, and he was just, hanging out like anybody else. No one knew who he was. It's just funny because then on ESPN, on the bar at the TV, he's like, oh, yeah, and they're talking about him calling no-hitter. Or like they hear his voice in there. So he was just like, and I go, hey, that's the guy that called the no-hitter. And somebody at the bar was like, yeah, I don't care. it was funny. But anyway, but yeah, so Tigers came in dead last. I would love to see what people think in the chat about that. The rest of the broadcasting team, maybe I'm not familiar with, but the A's, by the way, I'm surprised the A's didn't come in last because of what Glenn Cooper said was fired. I don't know if you guys saw what he said earlier in the year.
Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And the possum too was in there.
The possum? Oh, yeah.
The possum.
The broadcast studio.
Yeah. By the way, I wish that Chip Carey was last, because I don't like Chip Carey at all in St. Louis.
No.
Ever since he did the game 163 with Tigers and Twins, it's really changed my opinion about him. No, he was such you end up getting in trouble for that because he wasn't biased at all. It's like this might as well, I don't know.
Well, then what did he say? There's a single to the left, and then Rayburn comes up and catches it, no problem. It was routine out, kind of thing. I don't. There's too much angst about the broadcast team.
Yeah, I was just gonna say
they're not terrible. I think Simo in small doses has been a help. He livens things up a hair. They were a little sedate before. I think the players only thing, they do it too much now. I think it's a great thing if you do it once every 6 weeks and give them, but if you ask them to go to the well too often, they're not going to be able to, fill a whole show, fill an entire game with anything good to say. You need to space them out a little bit more. Then it's a nice little change up. I did see Shep today in the concourse, but I couldn't say anything to him because I had lost my wallet. I had to run back to my seat and I found it. I was very lucky. So I said, as I'm racing back to get my wallet, I say, oh, hey, there's Matt Shepard. So my Matt Shepard story.
There's somebody who was talking about Jim Price, and
the radio. I like the new guys. Bobby Scales is pretty good.
Bobby Scales is awesome. Bobby Scales is great.
Yeah, I think he's good. And I not because he's your friend, but I was listening to Gagne last, when he was up. The guy's great.
Yeah,
I mean, he's really good. Well, he's going to have a big league gig. Probably maybe not in Detroit, right? But
hopefully, maybe. Who knows? I mean,
that'd be great. I'm just saying, we're not trying to push Dan Dickerson out the door.
Oh yeah, no. Dan Dickerson, no. Dan Dickerson's also a friend of the show.
Yeah, exactly right.
No, he's good.
He's a legend. He's fantastic.
He's a legend. No, and that's what I'm saying. Like, but if he wanted it, if they were like maybe they wanted to replace him on TV, put Greg's good for TV too. Greg's got a good if they wanted to. But again, I think the reason why my experience with watching the games now is what you see right here behind you. Mm-hmm. This is my work stuff, but on my other side, to my left, right over here, I have another monitor.
Mm-hmm.
I have actually, I'll show little people, see how this works.
The tour,
if you will. Pardon because I have a big computer here. There's a TV right there. My little fridge. There's a picture of my father right behind everybody. Hang on. All right. So
your baseball lair.
Yeah, it's a baseball lair. It is technology. It took me years to build this up, and also savvy shopping, if you will. Anyway, I am literally surrounded by baseball. So my experience is I will have Dan Dickerson on or Matt Shepard, and I'm literally typing notes or doing whatever. And even when I'm at the game for home games, when I do go to the home games when I can, I usually will listen to Dickerson or I'll listen to Matt while typing along. And it's the same kind of experience, except it's not as, multi.
Sure.
Yeah. But anyway, my point is also I'm on Twitter too. I'm on Twitter, engaging with people, talking to people sometimes as well. So I just think it's everybody's doing it a little differently. But I agree with you with the players only thing, they've really, really ran it into the ground a little bit. But I also think it's because maybe it's cheaper to do it.
Could be.
I would think, but then I don't know. It was weird to see Todd Jones too. Like, I don't have a problem with Todd Jones. I just don't understand. I feel like sometimes I don't know. Bobby Scales is great. And Jim Price. All right. So the ugly is, let's see here. All right. So there's room. I think this is kind of like, it's not necessarily a ugly, but it's also so it's happening in terms of like there's a couple. I was trying to debate about this. I was debating whether I wanted to go with the ugly, as in we're going to be bombarded with showing Ohtani trade rumors until it happens, or I was just trying to figure out. I was like, okay, well, because I just feel like it's just going to get out of hand. But I really wanted to address something else that was kind of ugly, and that is and it's been a while. We haven't talked about them. The Pittsburgh Pirates. The Pittsburgh Pirates have fallen off a little bit, to say the least. Yeah. The Pirates are now in last. This was a team that was in first place right after May, or excuse me, in April. Feeling good. They were in contention for a while, but the Pirates have fallen down a rabbit hole that they're bringing up prospects. They're bringing up everybody now, but it's strange to see a team that, I don't know. I expected a little bit, especially how bad the division is. After 19-9, having one of the best records they had, they went 8-18. So it's like, okay, fine. But they came back and they're like 11-15. Okay, But this month they're 3-12. This month, yeah. You want to bet you want to see how much they've been outscored in the second half of the season? I take a guess. They've been outscored 43-17.
Not good.
43-17, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, fell off. Yeah, Javi Baez in the chat said fell off a little bit as be too kind. The Pirates basically crap the bed. Essentially, the Pirates are, the Pirates are doing pirate things. So,
you know, it's really interesting. You brought it up. They have been bringing up a lot of guys, haven't they? I mean, they've been shuffling guys in and out, bringing up people for their debut.
Henry Davis.
Yeah, and Quinn Priester, and there's been a couple others.
Quinn Priester, they left that poor guy out to dry, didn't they?
That was unbelievable.
Come on.
So with all this, you know, bringing up all these young new faces, what have they done? They've lost, and they've been getting their butts kicked. You know, and people, I can understand completely how Tiger fans want to see Justin Henry Malloy and Austin or Parker Meadows. Excuse me, we want to see Austin Meadows too, but different story. But you know. The Tigers went the other route. They have hung with their guys. They've delayed the gratification of bringing up these young players, and they've kind of held it together a lot better than the Pirates have, you know, with their experienced guys and letting guys get in the groove. And you know, I think it's interesting how the two approaches, how it's worked this year. I'm sure you could find ways it's worked in the opposite direction in other years, but.
Yeah, and you had Andy Rodriguez, another top prospect.
I was just gonna say that's what I put in there because Stan was about Henry Davis is not bad in the outfield. By the way, he doesn't wear gloves. It's weird to see. You don't often see people barehanded anymore. But I remember seeing him in Erie, and it was just like built like a brick. You know what? And just
Nick Gonzalez too has been up as well. But I mean, they were a team. I mean, this was my victory lap. I said they were going to struggle, and they are in last place now. I still think they have a bright future. I just think it's going to take them a couple of years. And I think pitching-wise, they're going to need to develop some pitching because they do have some young hitters that have a lot of promise, like O'Neill Cruz when he gets back, Brian Hayes. I think it's just about them finding a pitching that can help this team finally get back into contention because I don't think they've made the playoffs since 2015. So it's been a while for them.
I didn't expect them to get the postseason this year at all. I mean, you know, it's as far as will we see Austin Meadows again once and for all? I don't think so. And somebody mentioned earlier in the chat,
we had a question about
it. We'll get to that too, but I don't think we will. But the Pirates are what they are. They're booty, you know, pirate booty. Ha ha ha! Bad joke. So, all right, that is my good and bad, the ugly for this week. They don't hit, they score runs, and they're just a bad product on the field. Even but watching their AAA team, because I've seen them play Toledo a couple times, like gangbusters, so it's really weird. So, all right, we have plenty of questions to get to in the chat. So I started a few of them. So let me go back through and start here. So first question comes from Randall. So Harris trades Erod and Michael Lorenzen. Who is in our starting rotation? Well, go ahead, John.
I would say Manning, Skubal, Reese Olson, maybe Bo Brisky, and then if you get a young starting pitcher back in one of those trades.
I think Brisky's going to be in the bullpen. They stretched. They made it to a point where he's been pitching from the stretch in Toledo. He's been pitching from the stretch here. I think Brisky's going to stick in the. I think Brisky's going to stay in the bullpen.
So then, who would you have then? Tyler Alexander, maybe.
Tyler Alexander, maybe Tyler. Go ahead.
Is he done for the year?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. No. Yeah. I was just gonna say. Yeah, that's what I thought.
It'd be Faedo.
You could see. Well, we saw Flores hit 96, 97, but he got shelled a little bit. You could see Sawyer Gibson Long get a call up from Erie, maybe because Erie's gotten. Ty Madden pitched pretty well the other day, but I don't see him coming up in the rotation. But it could be an arm from Erie. It could be any arm from Erie. Lyle Lockhart been pitching well too. We could see that. What about Spencer Turnbull? Well, I mean, Spencer Turnbull could make. He's supposed to be throwing off amount or throwing batting practice soon, but the whole Spencer Turnbull thing in the locker room, and everything, that's just a weird vibe altogether. Like the Tigers have kind of kept them with him hiring Scott Boras as an agent. Things have gotten really weird. Again, that's just speculation, but there's just a kind of. You know, I don't know how often we're going to see him in the Tiger, Tiger rotation soon. You like to see him, and but it's just the whole thing's been weird. So
he's outside the circle of trust now.
Yeah, he's outside. That's a good one. I like that. Jackal Loffigan, Alex want to know about him making the rotation. It could be possible. I mean, his velocity's up there, and he's pitching better as of late. His numbers in Toledo are kind of hit miss, but for a guy who just went from high A to triple A, I mean, he's been handling his own, and some of the movement, some of the stuff is encouraging. So, again, that was one of the most unexpected things I've probably seen in the farm system in quite some time. Like, he was pitching well in high A, and I was like, all right, well, probably had the year, and then boom, right there in triple A, and he's the most consistent starter the Mudheads have. He really is. So,
well, and if he did come up, I mean, you only got to get 8 or 10 starts out of a guy. It doesn't have to be great as long as he's competitive. It gets you through the season. I mean,
and a couple bullpen games, maybe. I mean, that's seemed to fit the Tigers pretty well.
Yeah, they can do bullpen games. I mean, you still have Hill on your Garrett Hill. You could call up again and stretch him out a little bit and maybe do something with that. But so we did another question from Saea. Are you guys concerned that we have an oversaturation of lefties from the draft and also in the minors? I feel like the only good righty hitters in the majors are Torkelson and Verling. That's a good question. But you want to take a first crack at this first?
Yeah, I would. For me, the number of right-handed pitchers that are out there, and I would always lean toward as many left-handed bats. If all things are equal, if the righty and the lefty are roughly at the same level of talent, I'll take the left-handed bat all the time. I don't think you can have too many. I mean, I understand sometimes a lefty can dominate you that way, but I actually think the Tigers have had a shortage of left-handed bats over the years, and I think it's good now they have a lot of options to build a lineup with. I think they'll find their righty hitters.
Yeah, I mean, Justin Henry Malloy is a right-handed hitter. I don't know. To me, it's like, I'm not saying it doesn't matter, but you take the best hitters available, whether they're righty, lefty. So you're not going to pass up on a Kevin McGonnell because he's a lefty and you have a lot of lefties already in your organization. So I think
if you got the lefties, you win the platoon match. I mean, more often than not. So,
but this is a system though, until very recently, has not had a lot of lefties, and they're starting. Yeah, and so I think they're more than making up for it now. And we did get a question. Ty Cobb want to know: have I seen Navagato play? How does he profile as an MLB shortstop? Is he just an org guy? I think Navagato shows glimpses of being maybe a potential bat off the bench, but I just don't see him as a regular everyday shortstop. I think he's gotten significantly better, but I just don't see him making that adjustment because it's always that you look at the numbers, but then can they make that transition from AAA to the major leagues? And that's such a huge jump. And honestly, I think about it this way: if the organization, in terms of what Detroit thought that there may be consideration for it, but for now, I just see him as an org guy. I mean, unless some big power thing comes out of it, I don't know. I just don't see him really. Yeah. So that's my take on Navagato. I like him as a player, though. I do like him as a player, and it's nice to see a guy like him get some run in the system. So, but as far as even as getting back to the lefties for a second too, the Tigers, I think it was a couple of years ago, within the last 2 years, they've added. They didn't really have any lefties at all until last year, the year before. No, within the last 2 years. So I think it was needed, and it's warranted too, because there's a philosophy in place. Whereas I don't think, to a certain extent, under Avila, no, I can't say that. I can't say it with a straight face. I think here I can say this because the analytic people, there was the old school. We talked about this before, Uper. The old school that was there, guard, Avila, Dabrowski, or Chad, all those guys, versus the metrics people. Like, you hear rumors that they wanted Zach Nato. The metrics people wanted Zach Nato the night of the draft instead of Chase Young. So that was one of those things where I think the Tigers didn't really have a philosophy. They had a guy that, he can hit for power, but he strikes out 35% of the time. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm not exaggerating about the strikeout rate, but it didn't feel too far off from that truth. Like, it felt like a lot of times the Tigers didn't really have a specific profile. And so I think some of these lefties are fitting that. So, But yeah, let's see here. I think somebody was talking about trading. Dog Pound made a good point here. I like to bring up. Talk about Erod. He's opting out regardless of what happens to the team because I believe once the season's done, his value will never be higher than before this trade done. You deal him now, and I agree with Dog Pound. He like the free agent class coming out this year is just yeah. So
yeah, he has to test the market. He'd be crazy not to.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't, hard to imagine any scenario where he wouldn't. I thought when he had that injury, I thought the Tigers would be very, very fortunate to get him back on the mound by the initial reports before the trade deadline.
Yeah.
So I was really starting to think that really scuttled his trade value. But the first two starts back were okay, but this last start was excellent. I mean, he looked really good. Again, I have to keep saying against the Royals, he toyed with them. He really did. I was there. I mean, it was impressive. He was inside, outside, up, down. The 2-run rally was legit. I mean, those were 3-line drives, but that was the only bit of trouble he ran into all night. He rebounded after that, no problem. So I think you have to put him out there. You have to establish a good price. But if it gets met, you just make the deal. And some people will grouse about it, but that's how it is.
Yeah, I mean the you'll see tomorrow. The offer I put together from the Brewers too. There's 3 guys that I feel that, especially what's funny, ironically enough, the right-handed bats. So there's 3 guys that you'll see in the piece tomorrow. I got to work on the AL East guys. There's a couple of guys I'm targeting too, but there's one pitcher in the NL East that I really, really like, and it fits the profile for the Tigers a lot. He's a reliever, but I'll just wait till tomorrow. I'm just teasing the article for tomorrow, but please check out Chris's article over at TigersNLReport.com. He did a fantastic job on. We broke it on in 2 parts. So him and I had both the same idea, so we decided to divide and conquer, and I think it came out pretty well. So check it out. It's good stuff. So I think, do we have any other? Zach Miller asks, what do you guys think about Badu? Is he someone that has enough talent for the long term?
I don't think so, because I think like Riley Green and Max Clark, they're gonna occupy 2 of the outfield positions. Maybe Justin Henry Malloy could be like a 4th outfielder type platoon option. So then it's like, well, who's better long term? Is it going to be Parker Meadows or Akil Badu? Maybe the Tigers acquire another outfielder via trade or in an upcoming draft. So in terms of him being a starter on the Tigers when they're competing for the playoffs or the World Series, I'm going to say probably not. That's not to say he can't, impact a major league team, maybe off the bench as a 4th outfielder. But I'm going to say for this Tigers team, I think it's kind of a long shot that he's going to be a starter on this team when they're ready to compete. And yeah, Kerry Carpenter as well, who's I would say more of a DH, but I think it's going to be an uphill battle for him to position himself as a starter on the Tigers in the future.
In terms of long-term talent, though, I mean, I'm not going to automatically pencil in Max Clark. I'm not going to. Here's the thing. And this is, somebody gave me crap about this earlier in the week, and that's fine. It was perfectly fine. Somebody asked me, we're redoing our top. Now it's going to be a top 30 list at Tiger Minor League Report, and we're expanding it. And so I put out my top 10 on Discord, and somebody asked me, or I didn't have the 2nd round draft pick on there, and somebody was like, "Well, how come you didn't have him on there?" I get her to each their own, what something to that effect. And I said, "Well, I haven't seen him play, so I don't. It's you can't. I understand that Max Clark's a special talent, and I'm sure he will be the future Tigers. But for me, maybe it's just I'm trying to be. I'm cynical. Maybe I don't know, or maybe I'm an old man. I don't know. I just want to see these guys play first before I'm just going to automatically pencil them in.
It's a legitimate point, Raj.
No question. Honestly, like, and Bloodroy makes a good point too. Badu was rushed. He was rushed, and he's played better. Like defensively, he's played better. His arm is showing better. I'm just not really going to write. I think he's a serviceable player, but just to say that he's not going to be part of the future, I don't know. I just think it's, I don't know. Like, we just can't write everybody in. I've never understood that logic. Like, what? Like, we're just going to put Nate Cornejo is going to be the future ace of the staff because he won 20 games in your year, whatever it was.
Yeah. Well, with Badu, the point is he was rushed. I mean, that's you know, a Rule 5 draft pick. I mean, that's basically the definition of one, right? they get plucked from wherever they are. And he was injured the year before, so he didn't even play that year. So, you know, go back to what Scott Harris said. I mean, it's become kind of a punchline at times about controlling the strike zone. Boy, Badu had a couple great walks today, and that one walk was in the middle of a rally, you know, and it was impressive. I mean, he fell behind in the count, and he worked it and took the right pitches and got himself on base. And there's something to be said for that. And he's pretty good at it. I was actually the one thing in that 11-10 loss when they scratched out that 9th inning rally. He came up, and I was really surprised he swung at the first pitch. And I don't really give people too much crap about swinging at the first pitch, because if he would have knocked it up the gap, we all would have been happy as hell, right? But he made an out. He drove in a run, but the out was critical. And then Riley Green also swung at the first pitch. And Scott Barlow had been walking everybody. So that was the only reason I was a little hesitant about, you know, swinging at the first pitch there. But overall, Badu puts together some pretty good at bats. I think he's a worthwhile player to keep around, whether he starts or not. I think there's future there.
As far as, so yes, I understand he was a Rule 5 pick, but he was still rushed.
Yeah,
I mean, he was still
that's
rushed.
the definition of Rule 5, absolutely.
Yeah, because how often do you see positional players getting, well, effectively, may I say, and considering he was coming off an injury too, I think he was coming off an injury too when he was in the Twin system. But
yeah, he missed the whole year pretty much.
So, but anyway, there was a question in here that this was a hot take topic from Samuel, and he said, "Is Justin Verlander the best pitcher in Tigers history?" Because most greatest players in franchise history are positional players. I mean, he's correct about that.
Well, first off, I mean, you gotta make some points about points in history, right? I mean, the guys back in the 1920s and I mean, we don't know how good Hook Stoss really was, right?
Right.
And really, if you go back before integration, I mean, that's a problem too. And so that gets us into Hal Newhouser. But you look at Hal Newhouser's number and you think, wow, that guy was good, you know? So I always think of these things as post-integration. So now we're looking at basically, I mean, Robinson was what, 48? Whatever year it was, 47. So I always think it as 1950. That's when there was more players of color in baseball by then. Best pitcher for the Tigers since 1950? I mean, you know, it's a pretty short list. It's not too tough to come up with it. I mean, you're talking about Lolich, and you're talking about Verlander, and you're talking about Scherzer. And I mean, for a short span of time, Denny McLain. I mean, who are we missing? Well, Jack Morris, excuse me, of course. But I take Verlander over Jack Morris every day.
Oh, yeah. It's not even close.
So really, to me, it comes down to probably Mickey Lolich, Max Scherzer, and Justin Verlander. And you can argue Scherzer was better after he left the Tigers.
Yeah. And here's the thing about you look at the terms of
Jim Bunning was very good.
Yeah. I mean, Jim Bunning, yeah, he was good, but he was even better in Philly.
Yeah.
And he went in the Hall of Fame as a Philly.
Well, that's point.
Yeah. I mean, no. But it was terms of like what I think with Al Newhouser is that it was during they're always talking about during the war.
Mm-hmm.
So they always kind of consider that. But I mean, when he was good, it was when Hank Greenberg came back in 45 in the second half of the season. My Tiger history in the 40s, admittedly, is one of my weaker points, but I think Justin Verlander, for all the pitching we sat through in the 90s, we can talk about the 80s too, but Jack Morris wasn't a strikeout pitcher. He was a guy who pitched to contact. He pitched a good split finger, but he never put up strikeout numbers. Like, if you look at Dave Stieb, for example, his counterpart in the 80s, Dave Stieb was a strikeout pitcher. Roger Clemens was a strikeout pitcher. Tigers never really had a strikeout pitcher outside of, even as much as the ballyhoo about Denny McLain winning 30 games in 1968,
mm-hmm.
He wasn't a strikeout guy. He wasn't Bob Gibson. Bob Gibson went out there and sawed off set a World Series record against the Tigers. I mean, and Mark Fidrych. Mark Fidrych he had the potential. I mean, he did strike out, but he wasn't. His numbers too. You look at his numbers. He had one of the best WAR seasons. The 1976 season was one of the best WAR seasons for any Tiger.
Sure.
By the way, this is why I want to do a history podcast of the Tigers sometime. But David Steeb, Samuel, I watched Secret Base on Dave Steeb. It was one of the greatest things I've ever seen in my life. Just how they broke him down and everything. It was masterclass of how a video should be done. So great. But Justin Verlander, I mean, I sat through Scott Sanders. I sat through Kevin Ritz. I sat through a lot of bad pitching, and I've never saw a Tiger pitcher come in and dominate like Justin Verlander did.
Yeah.
Max Scherzer was right up there. Don't get me wrong. But of all the baseball I watched, Justin Verlander by far is the best pitcher I've ever seen in a Tigers uniform, period. Doyle Alexander did have somebody said a few hundreds of K seasons, but he also pitched like maybe 289 innings. I remember Bill Gullickson. I looked back. I remember he was the last Tiger game winner 20 game winner before Verlander. And his numbers, you want to guess how many strikeouts he had the year that he won 20 games? So I'll just give you an idea. So I'll give you one piece of evidence. Okay. So he went 20-9.
Yep.
So he pitched 226 innings. How many strikeouts do you think he had?
119.
91. The year after that, where he gave up a league high 35 home runs in 1992, he struck out 64 in 201 innings pitched.
Wow.
So it's like you
look at a different game then.
Yeah, it's a different era. I get it. But the Tigers never had a fireballer. They never had a guy that they could go and say, that's a guy I want to see. You look at the Mets, they had Doc Gooden. That's a guy you wanted to see. When Cleveland was starting to descend a little bit, I mean, they didn't even have, technically, no one was crying for the starts of Charles Nagy, but the White Sox had Jack McDowell, who was a strikeout pitcher. They had Alex Fernandez. There's certain, you think of those A's teams too.
Mm-hmm.
David Stewart was effective a pitcher, but I mean, the strikeout became more and more important, but the Tigers never really had an ace, a guy that they could go to and stop a losing streak. Verlander could do that.
No question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say he's the best pitcher in their history. I mean, especially if you establish a cutoff at some point, then there's really not much debate to it. I mean, Mickey Lolich was a great pitcher. I mean, obviously. But I think a lot of his is built on winning 3 games in the World Series, which is pretty cool. But
yeah, it's cool.
That was a one-time effort.
But so in terms of Randall was saying, I want to apologize, but you guys are absolutely Tiger fans, and that's not bad. But overrating players is your gig. Badu is not a major league player. Look at the analytics. Okay, we didn't say it was serviceable. We didn't say it was an all-star or anything like that. I don't know what we're missing here. The guy, I mean, in terms of you're looking at exit velocity, those things like that. Yeah, some of the advanced metrics do not favor him. But as of right now, who do you have? I mean, they're going to call up Parker Meadows? Sure. I mean, I would like to see them try and at least do something different with that. Absolutely. But as far as his numbers go, what is he doing in terms of outs above average, exit velocity? He's gotten better. There's little things he's gotten better. He's cut down his strikeout rate by 7%.
Yep.
He's went from 28 to 21%. His walk rate's up. He's walking. I don't know what else you want. So
for me, it's he gives quality at bats. Again, it doesn't make him a star. I don't think anybody's saying that. We're not projecting him to be an all-star game. I don't even know if he's going to be a regular. But you look at a guy like that who can run. He can pinch run the bases. But again, I look at the walk rate and the strikeout rate going in the right direction. It's important, and he can be a 4th outfielder. I think it's wrong to say he's not a major leaguer. I think he is. I think he will be. I think if the Tigers put him on the street, he'd have a job in about 10 minutes.
Yeah. he serves a role.
Mhm.
He is a major league player. Is he? You know, if he wasn't, he wouldn't be here. So, but
Would I rather have Larry Herndon? Yes.
Oh, Ty Cobb. Okay, so he was saying Badu's arm's comparable to Stewart's. Actually, his arm's gotten better. His arm has gotten like I'm not saying Christian Stewart's arm was like oh my god. Oh, it was Justin Henry Malloy made a throw very similar to Christian Stewart a couple weeks back in Toledo, and that was
Not everybody has an outfield arm. That's for sure.
You know what? Look, and you know what? I gave him even Brock says this. Badu is a solid fifth outfielder on a good team.
Okay.
He's a major leaguer. So, all right.
Yeah. You know what? There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
It's a job. I would have. I'd take it.
Yeah. If I can hit like, for example, anybody who was hitting off Duran the other night for the Twins closer, did you see the variation on his pitches, Uper?
No, I missed that.
Oh, my God. It was disturbing. Like oh, man, I gotta pull this up real quick, and then we'll get out of here because it was one of those things where I was looking at, see here. Okay, so Chris and I were talking about this earlier today. Usually, Chris and I will start texting each other first thing in the morning, baseball or random stuff like that. So this is him last night. Pitch sequencing. Ready for this? 100 splitter, 98 splitter, 99 splitter, 103 four-seamer, 103 four-seamer, 86 curveball. He almost had a 20-mile-an-hour difference between his pitches.
Sure.
That's ridiculous.
He is fun to watch. There's no question about that.
That is ridiculous. Yeah. So anyway, he did throw a fastball at 104.
Yeah.
I mean, how are you not a major league player going, I'm going to die at this at bat? Like,
the other night, just to go talk about heaters.
Yeah.
I was so excited to be there last night when Miguel Cabrera had that go-ahead RBI against Hernandez. He was throwing some real heat. I mean, he came in throwing, he was throwing in 98 to 100. We know Miggy's had problems with that kind of velocity. Yeah. And that was such an old school Miguel Cabrera single. Shot that thing the other way.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
Hit the RBI when he needed it. So fun to see. That's he batted one more time, but that's going to be my final memory. I don't know if I'll see the team in person again this year. I might go up to Minnesota. I might not. But to have that one as I've just kind of counted that one as my going away present from Miguel Cabrera. I was really happy to be there for that one last night.
Yeah, it's going to be, those moments are going to be rare. And so let's end the podcast with previewing the next series. Just talk about who's pitching tomorrow for the Tigers. Also, we'll take the mound tomorrow against Seth Lugo. Let's kind of give me pause for a moment there. San Diego's not announced their starter for Saturday, but Matt Manning will take the mound. And Manning's been pitching better as of late, so I'm looking forward to seeing Matt Manning start. Appreciate that. And then Tigers have not announced their starter for Sunday yet. And Joe Musgrove, one of the better. I love watching Joe Musgrove pitch.
Yeah, he's good.
He's really good. So,
well, it's going to be interesting. The Padres just have the lineup. I mean, we've talked about them earlier, but they just have if you just go by name recognition, right?
Yeah.
It seems like they have a lineup that can rise up and murder you at some point, but they've obviously been up and down throughout the year. Hopefully the Tigers can keep them at bay. The Reese Olson story is one of the best stories of the year so far.
Yeah.
Now we're talking, has he even made it to 40 innings? I'm not even sure. So, there's still a lot to prove, but I'll say it again. And I've said it many times. I saw his last bad start for Toledo before he got on a good run. And if you were there that night, to think 2 months later that he'd be one of the positive stories of the major league team, you never would have believed it. So it's really been fun to watch.
Oh, Ray got to witness Musgrove's no-hitter too, and that was I think it was a homecoming from him too, because I believe he's from that area.
Nice.
That's awesome, Ray. That's a great memory to share.
Ray said he's been to every stadium.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, I'm so jealous.
Ray's been a long time listener, and I could hear if Ray wanted to tell stories on him and Ray and Stan could do some stories on here, and that'd be fine by me. But like I think as far as Skubal, I think Skubal's gonna be fine. Somebody was I'm not concerned about it. He wasn't sharp. I mean, but his fastball was missing bats. That was the most important thing. You take away a little bit of that. Yeah, granted, he got hit up by Kansas City. Maybe he was tipping his pitches. Somebody suggested that. I think he's going to be fine, honestly.
Yeah, there was a couple of defensive silliness behind him too.
Yeah.
Eric Haas took a bad route, probably cost him a run. And baseball's a weird sport, you know. If they don't get that run on the board, I mean, does he come out firing the next inning? Who knows? I mean, just.
But by the way, thank you, Ty Cobb. He said, thanks, one of the best podcasts this year. Great job. Thank you. But thank you for all the questions and back and forth. I take pride in the fact that, look, we might not always agree on things, but to have agree to disagree and then call it a day and still talk baseball, that's the point of podcasts. And that's the point of, well, what used to be Twitter. I mean, Twitter's cesspool, but but just having a discussion. I might not agree with you. I might not have the most common, and like John and I challenge John because John likes to be challenged, and it's a good back and forth sometimes. Sometimes I look at him like, but again, I respect the fact he sticks to his guns, but again, everybody in the chat too. It's a good back and forth. So thank you.
Different opinions are lifeblood, really.
Yeah.
I've said it before. If we had 4 guys on the show who all thought the same, we'd have 3 too many guys.
Amen, you know? Joseph, right there. Amen. Right there. Perfect. That is the point of general conversation most people have lost. You're absolutely 100% correct. I've talked about this with my son. Everybody, really. It just, the art of conversation's gone. Somebody just can't sit there and...
Nice.
By the way, it is Negro League weekend. So I'm looking forward to that. I'll be there Sunday. I'm actually going to my first game with my son in a few years. My son doesn't really care for baseball, which is shocking. But let me just tell you something. Like, my son has a lot of various interests. He's a sneakerhead. He inherited my father's mechanical skill set. He's a very technical kid. Okay. And he is really, like, he's different than me. And he's into anime a lot. He's a completely different cat than me, and that's fine. So he is same thing. He has his hyper focused things that he's passionate about and all that. And so I'm meeting his girlfriend for the first time too. So it'll be fun. But yeah, I'll be out there Sunday for Negro League weekend. And by the way, the Negro League conference is going on right now. As we speak, they're touring Comerica Park, I believe, tomorrow. So if you see some people out there with Sabre, please say hello to them. There's some good people out there that work for Sabre Southern Michigan chapter. So
so you mean the girlfriend, are you going for goofy dad or cool dad?
I'm going for dad? I think I'm gonna I think I'm gonna approach the cool stoic dad, you know, like,
there you go.
I know a lot about baseball. I know a lot about baseball, but I'm not gonna tell you how much I know, and I'm gonna flex that when I wanted to, but they haven't really explored Southwest Detroit. So I'm gonna take them to a to a tour of the area, if you will. So give him, like I said, he played baseball with me as a coach. I coached him. He just doesn't, I said the Kansas City, I was saying something about Kansas City Royals. He's like, you mean the Chiefs? Because the Chiefs, the MLB team. I'm like, no, but it's fine. It's fine. No, honestly, it's again, it's not disputing anything like that, but he can look at a pair of shoes and tell you something, like some of the things he knows are just like,
yeah,
like but he's got the same musical taste as me though. So that's some of the stuff rubs off. So.
Some people come to baseball late in adulthood too.
Yeah. Eventually, maybe he will. Maybe one day he'll do a podcast, and he'll revisit that. So, but thank you so much for everybody listening. We appreciate it, like I said. And if you like, some of the comments, I could be here all night with some of the comments that are coming in towards the end of the night. But so any show questions or anything like that, feel free to email us at tigersmlreport.com or tigersml@gmail.com, and we will talk to you hopefully Sunday. If not Monday, we'll probably do a podcast. And of course, if there's anything with the trade deadline, we will be first to podcast it. So the trade deadline, by the way, we'll probably be live streaming, and there'll be an article coming out tomorrow. I'm going to be doing one on the AL East, NL East teams to look at, and then 3 guys for the Milwaukee Brewers. So for all other content, go to tigerminorleaguereport.com. We'll talk to you soon. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.